Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining today. My name is Hamid and I work with a product management group in GeoGraphix. And today I will take you through what's new in GVERSE GeoGraphix for the 2024.2 version. We've packed a lot into this release, and there are over 100 new features and improvements across GeoGraphix to make your day-to-day work easier and faster. I won't go through every single one, but here's what I will cover today. We will start with the major transition happening on the GIS side, moving away from ArcGIS Engine runtime. Then we look at the upgrades to field planning, expanded integration with TGS, brand new connection to MJ logs, some major updates to Query Builder, and finally improvements to the geology and geophysics tools. We'll begin though with the most important and impactful change in the 2024.2 version. I'm referring of course to the deprecation of ArcGIS Engine runtime. You've probably heard by now, Esri is phasing out the ArcGIS Engine runtime. This has a serious impact on GeoGraphix and how we deal with some of our GIS workflows. We made use of this technology for a long time for some critical functionality that a lot of users relied on. The good news is that even though the runtime is going away, we've transitioned to newer technology from Esri, so we can keep providing the tools that you need. We've approached this in two ways. First, we've rewritten workflows to not require Esri or any other third party for that matter. But where we couldn't avoid a third-party dependency, like connecting to mapping services, for example, ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Online, WMS, WMTS. For those kind of workflows, we've switched to Esri's newer ArcGIS Maps SDK. Second, for workflows that can now only be accessed inside ArcGIS Pro, we've built a new add-in for ArcGIS Pro, which lets you transfer data between your GeoGraphix and Pro projects. The basic idea is to let GeoGraphix users easily access the advanced GIS capability that ArcGIS Pro provides with a simple, uncomplicated way to move layers back and forth. So what does this mean for you? Most importantly, and I want to stress this again, all GIS workflows that were available in earlier GeoGraphix versions are still available in 2024.2. We spent a lot of time making sure of that. You're not losing any functionality. But on top of that, deployment is much simpler now. You don't need any extra installs, downloads, no extra license configuration, anything like that. Everything is packaged within GeoGraphix and it is ready to use right off the bat. You also get seamless integration with ArcGIS Pro with a new add-in enabling that bi-directional transfer. And finally, any existing layers that Esri has deprecated or no longer allows access to outside Pro are easily converted. Your maps and projects upgrade with minimal disruption. All right, that's the background. Now let's switch over and walk you through how all of this looks inside GeoGraphix. Okay, so within GeoGraphix, we have rewritten a lot of the workflows that depended on ArcGIS Engine, as I mentioned during my slides. One of those workflows was georeferencing. Again, it's still available pretty much the same way as it was before, only this time it's not dependent on the engine. We kind of have our own code written for it. You can still georeference your images. One of the other workflows that we used the ArcGIS engine for was the ability to select wells within a polygon. So with a polygon selector or multiple polygons selected, I can right click and say select wells that fall inside a polygon. Again, that still works. We have made it a little bit better. It's a little faster and actually honors your selections a little better now. As you can see, only the two selected polygons have their wells selected. The ones that fell outside the polygons do not have those wells selected. We've also rewritten all of our field planning workflows from the ground up. Again, using code native to GeoGraphix. We're not dependent on any third party for that either. I'll not go through that just now. I'll cover that during the section on Field Planner in a lot more detail. So all of the workflows that we had which required ArcGIS Engine, like I said, we've replaced either by writing our own functions for it or using Esri's Maps SDK. And one example of us using Esri's Maps SDK is when we connect to our mapping services. So I can still go to the import menu here and connect to an ArcGIS feature server, a map server, WMS layer connect. We've also added a WMTS connection now, so you can connect to web map tile services, ArcGIS online portals. And these work with Esri's Maps SDK, which, like I said, are packaged within GeoGraphix, so you don't need a separate install for it. Provide a URL here. Let's give it a layer name. We'll fetch the layers, choose the layers we want to display, hit finish, and that should then go to that server, fetch the layer, and display that on our map. So this is now coming from that WMTS server. Now, one key difference in the way we are doing this now is that when we get data for this layer, because we're not creating a static LYR layer in the background anymore, which is how we used to do it when we were implementing these connections via the ArcEngine setup, because we are not doing a static LYR layer anymore, this is just brought in live from the server. So as things will change, as the server updates, as these maps are updated, your maps will simply need to refresh the layer, and you'll see the changes in that map in GeoGraphix right away as well. So this is sort of a live connection now. It does need a refresh or open the map, reload the map for you, or reload the layer at least, but this will update as that data updates for you on your servers. So that's kind of how we've done the Maps SDK part of things, rewriting part of things. Again, you really feel no hindrance, no changes here. The only thing that's going to be different again is the deployment mechanism, because you don't need to go in and configure anything separately. All right, the second part of our approach is to write a plugin for ArcGIS Pro. I've got a project for ArcGIS Pro open here, and I've got a couple of layers in there. Like I have some leases here. I've got those color coded here, and then I've got open leases and some of the other leases here, and then I've got on top of that another layer overlaid, the green leases, which are going to expire soon. So I've got two layers leases here within this, on top of a land grid and a topographic base map. Now, to access our plugin, here's a new GVERSE GeoGraphix menu. That is going to be in your Arc Pro ribbon. And then in here, you can read and write to GeoGraphix. You can do a couple other things that I'm going to talk about in a second. But first, let's say you're in GeoGraphix and you've got a couple of layers here. For example, I'm just going to hide this topographic map for now. Let's say you've got your well spots layer, and let's say you've got some contours that you want to take over into ArcGIS Pro because you want to consume them in some workflows over there. Transferring it does not require now taking a shapefile, moving it, importing it into Arc Pro or anything like that. All you got to do is from your ArcGIS Pro project in the GeoGraphix ribbon, click on Read from GeoGraphix. That's going to go in, bring up your active project, all the layers in your active project, including all your AOIs, and then you can go through and you can choose the layers that you want to bring in. So I wanted to bring in my contours for my Red River, there it is, and I wanted to bring in my well spots, hit load, and that will go through, process those layers, and put them in your ArcGIS project as they are in your GeoGraphix project. We've worked hard to make sure that we can make them as similar, as close as possible to each other in terms of symbology and their appearance. So along with the data that's coming in, you're also getting that appearance coming in pretty much the same way as it was in your GeoGraphix project. So there's my contours right there, and I've got my well spots coming in over here as well. And if I were to show you the expansion of these layers, so all the entities in that well spots layer are available as features, right? So I've got my straight hole wells, I've got my deviated paths in the straight hole wells. This is all the different symbols for all the different entities I have. I had some thematic mapping applied, which I hadn't turned on in GeoAtlas, but all of that information does come through. So if you've got any of those renderers turned on, thematic or bubble maps or proportional bias, it will also come through as is, and you can toggle them on or off within this ArcGIS environment to get that information over here as well. Same thing for your contours and your isomap layers. All of those entities like data points and boundary polygons, contours, all of them come over as well. So that's one way transfer, getting stuff from GeoGraphix into ArcGIS Pro. Let me check those off. Let's say, what about information that's in here and you want to send over into GeoGraphix? Let's see these two lease layers, for example. Select the ones that you want to move over to GeoGraphix. Here's my Write to GeoGraphix button. I'm going to click on that. Now that's going to prepare those layers. So it takes those layers, does the format conversions that we need to be able to display these layers into GeoGraphix, and then it will let me add those layers into my GeoGraphix project. It will ask me a couple of questions like, What do I want to call the layers when they get in there? Do I want to override, layers if they're already present in my GeoGraphix project? Which AOI do I want to keep them in? Also, these layers could be bigger than your projects. What happens then? Do you want to still add those layers that fall outside your project extents? Do you want to ignore them? Or do you want to crop your layers so that your project is not blown out of the current extents and it just kind of maintains its current extents? So all of those questions, when you answer them here, it's going to go finish this, and that is going to transfer that data over to my GeoGraphix project. So I can go in here, go to my layer select, and you should see your leases and your expiring leases coming in here. Let's turn that on, and that should re-render so that you have your expiring leases in here, which are those green polygons. Again, we're trying to make sure that we copy as much of the symbology and the colors and the format as possible. It's not always going to be exact because there's just some differences in the two applications, but we do try to get it to look as close as possible to each of them. Now, the key difference here between connecting through Maps SDK to get that topographic image or connecting to a server, ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Map Server, which was those live kind of connections where the layer is on your map, but if it updates, it changes in here if you refresh it. If you bring it through the plugin, though, that's a static transfer, right? So things coming in will not automatically update. We convert that layer into a format that we can use, and that's what we are using to display here. So if something changes on your Arc Pro project, that is not going to be reflected here until you push that layer over to your project, and vice versa. If you've moved a layer from GeoGraphix over to ArcGIS Pro, like our contours, for example, and some changes, you regrid or anything like that in GeoGraphix, that is not going to be reflected in Arc Pro until you push that over to the Arc Pro project again. And that's how simple it is. Just a quick primer of what we're doing with our ArcGIS Pro plugin. We've also added a couple of extra features. I mean, we cannot access LYRX files or LYR files outside GeoGraphix anymore, so you can import them into Arc Pro and export them through the plugin, or use the Add Files to GeoGraphix button to just kind of go through and add those LYRX files in, read them and process them within Arc Pro, but end up with a layer in GeoGraphix without really having that extra step. And also we've done a batch converter here. This is that utility that will let you go through. It'll parse all your AOIs, spot any layers that are no longer supported or have been deprecated by Esri in 24.2, convert them into a format that GeoGraphix can understand. And this could be, existing WMS layers, for example, or any layer based on the LYR format. We'll convert those. We'll also update your maps and everything like that. We'll also create backups of those layers so that in case you need to fall back on them at any point, you are able to, and your projects should be ready and good to go without requiring individual layers to be converted manually. So that's our ArcGIS Pro connector and our transition away from ArcGIS runtime. I know this was a brief overview. If you've got more questions, I'm sure you do, please don't feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to help you understand a bit more of what we've been up to. Let's move on though. And next up, let's talk about the changes to field planning. In 2024.1, back in November, we introduced our new multilateral planning capability that lets you plan any multilateral configuration, stacked laterals, planar, fish bones, unilaterals, or really whatever you needed directly on the map. In 2024.2, we've enhanced that capability significantly. You can now create lease tracks right from the map, flag surface and subsurface hazards, automatically enforce setback rules, even detect well collisions as you plan your laterals. We've also made it much faster to lay down well paths, define slots, automatically generate laterals with the spacing, direction, and length you need. So all of those kind of everyday useful features that help you plan your wells more rapidly, more quickly. And everything you design, wells, pads, surveys, they can be saved directly into Wellbase and then handed off seamlessly to GVERSE Planner when you're ready to build your actual drillable surveys. Let's switch back over to GeoAtlas, and let's say you want to digitize some laterals right here in this area. To do that, I'll go to my field planner, select the plan I want to modify, go into my create mode, and then digitize a heel and a toe to get my lateral going. I can also assign a surface location here. So let's say I want the surface location to be right here, and that is basically my lateral. Now if I want to be super precise and want to say I want it running exactly north-south, I can specify an azimuth and a length. I'm going to go 1600 meters, and meters because this is a meters project. If your project is in feet, these units are going to be in feet, but I can set an exact azimuth and a length. When I click OK, that gives me a lateral that is exactly going north-south for 1600 meters. Now I can also set other information like a well name. I'm just going to call it plant 1. Give it a name. That's my well ID. That's going to be a name. I can give it, so I can be very precise about the surface location, give it a datum elevation as well. I'm just going to ignore that. So I've got my lateral planned 1.1 setting here. Now I can also give it a target layer. I'm going to go for the Bakken ISOmap layer. This is the TVDSS structure map that I need to target it on. If you wanted to go 50 meters above or below, 100 feet above or below your target layer, you can set that here. You can also give it a kickoff point for that particular lateral. And then I have basically my my lateral ready to go. Now, if I wanted to create copies of this, I can digitize this, right next to another parallel lateral right next to it. But what we've also done this release, we've added this ability to add parallel laterals. So I can give it a spacing. Let's say I want these to be 300 meters apart and want 2 laterals on the left and 2 laterals on the right. That is going to give me, when I click OK, 5 laterals for that planned 1 configuration. So 5 wells in that particular configuration, all originating from the same surface location, and all targeting my Bakken, but 5 different laterals planned really quickly. And once I have them, I can actually grab this configuration and copy paste that all over my map to get that rapid field planning done. You can also do paths. So if you don't want surface locations, you want to digitize paths, you can do that on the graph as well. Just point to where you want that pad, give it a name. I'm going to use a dummy elevation here. Let's go 400 by 200 for the pad dimensions. Click OK. And that's going to create that pad for you as well. Now again, these pads are not required, but if you do want to put them, you can. And then once you have the pad, you can also copy that around and move that around on your map. Let's say you want that pad over here. On here, you can also just copy the pad. Let's say you don't want the entire configuration, you just want that one pad, because what we can do with the pad is that you can right click and say auto plan. That lets me define multiple slots. Let's say I want 3 slots each in 2 rows, and I can give it a step out. I'm going to go 150. I want to go north-south. Let's say 1200 meters in this case. For spacing 500 meters. It's going to plan those laterals out of the pad for me. Out of these 3 slots of the lateral, it's going to plan those for me. I could do the same thing for the second row, or I could just have this one row setting it up like that. Click OK. That's going to create that pad for me. I can also rotate this around. So if I wanted at an angle or maybe flip it the other direction, I am able to just take that entire pad and move it like that as well. Full undo redo support, so you can always get back to where you were, and you're not limited to just straight laterals going right like that. You can also digitize as many points while you're digitizing a lateral. So let's say I want to digitize one going right through here, kind of curving a little bit. There's one. I can put another one here. Let's just add a few more curves to it. Double click there. And I'm going to put one right over here as well. Going to give this another surface location. All 3 from pretty much the same surface location here. Let's set some well properties here, because we're going to save this well later into the database. And I also want to set my target surface as the Bakken. So all of these are targeting the Bakken well as well. So that's how quickly you can digitize laterals and pads and all of that stuff on your map. Really quickly. Specialized tools to do that. I know a lot of people in the past have been using annotation lines and whatnot to be able to get to this point, but these are actual entities, well entities that you can use. These are shapefiles, so even if you want to take them somewhere else, some other software, you can use the connector to move them into Pro, and all of that stuff that comes with it being part of an actual layer. But you typically wouldn't be working in a void like this, just a blank sheet of paper and going in and adding wells as you go. You obviously have other factors to consider, perhaps primary among them, making sure that you are staying within the area that you want to stay in. So like a lease, right? And the new field planner lets you let's do that interactively. So any geographics layer that you have, in my case I've selected this land grid layer, and I'm just going to select some sections here. Let's say my lease is these 10 sections. I can right click, add it to a lease, select the lease I want to add them to, click OK, and that's going to create that lease for me. So all of those 10 polygons have been added to this lease. Now they're added as individual polygons. Maybe you don't really want all of that, so I'm going to select them and merge them into a single polygon, and then I'm going to select all of their edges and add a setback. Let's say I want this to be at least 150 meters from the edges, and I can clearly see the north end, my wells are kind of leaving my lease, and I don't need that. I need to clip it, which we will get to in a second, because there's other factors that you want to consider as well. There's the surface elevation. I've got this is my surface elevation. I want to make sure that my pads and my surface locations are not in areas that are too steep for me to put those in. I've got to make sure that I'm staying away, again, for my surface locations. My pads are far enough away from rivers and streams and other roads and other culture data that I have available. There's other wells in the area. I want to make sure that and the wells are basically subsurface hazards. Not only do my surface locations need to be far enough away from these wells, but my well bores should also stay far away from these wells. So all of this information needs to be considered when you're planning your well, and we do that through our hazard layers. So I'm going to go and create hazards for each one of those items that we were talking about, starting with our DEM layer. So you can bring in your DEM layers as isomaps now, and once you select that isomap, you can specify a slope. This is a flat area. I'm just going to go 3 for demo purposes. I can click OK, and that's going to go through and it's going to highlight all of the areas that have a slope more than the value that I specified. These red boxes are indicating that these are too steep according to my specifications. My pads and surface locations seems to be far enough away from each of this, so that's not really affecting me. But if I had a pad or a surface location in these surface locations, I would know right away that this is, I need to move that. I need to do something about it. What about your rivers and roads and all of those surface features that you want to stay away from? Again, let's go back to that same layer. I'm going to update that. Now I'm going to add that culture layer, right, which has all the roads and everything that I need. All of these entities are listed here. Let's say I want to stay 30 meters away from my class 4 highways, and I want to stay, sorry, I'm just going to duplicate that layer here because I also have my shoreline here. Let's say you want to stay 50 meters away from that. All right, so that's basically we'll go in and generate those hazards. We've got wells in the area. Those, remember, were subsurface hazards. I'm going to choose a second layer called vertical wells here, and I'm going to go through for my straight hole well entity. Again, I can be specifying entities from this drop down here. Make sure you set it as a subsurface hazard. And let's say you want to be 250 meters away from any wells that are in that area. Click OK. It's going to go through. It's going to create 3 different kinds of hazards. My slope hazards being these steep areas. My surface hazards being these areas around my shoreline, my roads. Again, my surface locations seem to be okay. They're far enough away from everything, so I don't really need to worry about it. But some of my wells are crossing over this subsurface hazard that I've identified. So how do we address this problem? Well, back in our planner, if you go back to our field plan, we have the clipping ability, which lets you select a lease layer, lets you select one or more hazard layer, and then all of the well configurations that you want to check it against. I click OK, it goes through, and then it'll clip anything that is outside the definition of what you just defined. So these wells, let me clean this up just a little bit so we can kind of see this better. I'm going to get rid of this and this. So you can see my wells were getting too close to this vertical well here. The subsurface hazards, they've been clipped. My wells were leaving my lease area. They've been clipped to be inside the lease. So that's how easily and quickly you can go through and figure out, if the wells that you're planning are following the rules that you have in mind for those wells. And the subsurface hazard thing is great, but it is working off of things from a map, right? It's not really Z aware. By Z, I mean depth aware. So it doesn't know exactly where it is. It just kind of says, okay, this is a subsurface hazard. Anything that gets close to it, wherever that depth may be, I'm going to clip it. But what you're really looking for, if you've got other wells in the area like I do, so I'm just going to turn on my well spots layer, and all of these pink wells are targeting the Bakken. And right away I can see this is not going to work. I've got too many collisions here. So I'm just going to get rid of these to keep our results simple. So I'm deleted those two paths here. But these wells, they look okay. But I don't know about this. This is getting a little too close. We can find out if that is colliding or not. We want to find out if that is too close or not. And to do that, I'll go into my collision detection, which lets me select a well-based layer. So I'm going to select my well spots layer here. And you can select multiples. You don't have to be one single layer. Also, other field planning layers, including the field planning layer itself. So if you want to compare these two configurations, or the laterals inside the configuration got too close, right? Specify a buffer distance. Again, let's go 250 meters. Select the wells that you want to run the collision detection for. Click OK, and it says, okay, I found 2 collisions, right? And it will give you the log for where the collisions are. So it's kind of colliding with itself. No real well here that it's colliding with. And that's the one right here. Let me kind of just quickly modify this so I can actually show you the collision. So if this well were to get too close, like here, we're going to also move this one so that this is far enough away so that we don't get this collision highlighted. And I'm going to run my collision detection again. Let's say again for 250 meters for both the wells. Same layers. We'll compute it. Now it detected 4. Right? It does give you a log file. It's telling you that plant 2.1 is 244 meters from this particular well, and then getting closer again. And there's that red highlight showing that this well is getting too close to that one well that we already have. Again, we just kind of move this well out far enough away, and then we should not get that same collision for those wells coming in. See, no collisions detected. So that's how you can make everything. You make your plans aware of all of the different things that are going on to get your plan locked down pretty quickly, pretty rapidly. And once you have it, you can either generate a geoprog report, you can generate drilling reports that will take all of this information of the surface location and the XYZ points from the target surface and the digitized points to give you the information that you need. You can also save these wells directly into Wellbase. And when you save them into Wellbase, it'll go through, it'll take these 8 wells that we've planned, give it the IDs that we specify here, and save them as wells in your database. There's my wells. If I go back to my quick filter, and because I'm just going to filter on the ID, it should give me the 8 wells that we just created right there. Also going to calculate their proposed surveys really quickly. And that really means these wells are ready for me to use anywhere I want to use them in GeoGraphix. And as an example, if I take them into GeoPlus, is that same area in GeoPlus, I'm going to add these wells that we just created. Sorry, I just do need to refresh this interpretation once so I can see the wells that I just created. And I'm just going to go here. We're going to go manage well list, add wells. Let's sort by well ID. There's the wells that we just created. I'm going to select them, click OK. Add them into the well group to start showing up over here. They also start showing up in my 3D view, and you can see they're kind of following that Bakken surface really perfectly as we planned them. And you know, they're here ready for me to use however I want to use them. These were just kind of sticks digitized on the map, so they're not, you know, particularly detailed surveys. But if you do want to make sure that you are, you know, these are in fact drillable wells, and you're ready to get to that point where you want to do detailed individual surveys, you just open the well in GVERSE Planner. That's our single well planning tool for single wells, where you can go in and actually digitize a survey as you need it to be. I'm just going to add one of these wells. Let's go 2.3 here. That's going to load that well as the default plan. You can see this is this one well right over here. Looks like a pretty good survey. You can actually go in and move this around as well. And it'll look at the parameters that you set down here to make sure that this is a drillable well. If I do something too crazy, it kind of highlights everything in red. And once I have that done, I'm just going to do some things that are a little crazy so you can actually see the effect of it. Let's say I'm going to put in that target surface here as well really quickly just to give you an idea of what's going on. So there's that target surface that we're following, and I've got my well kind of dipping below it and then coming back up here. It's all green, it's all good. And if I go to Wellbase, back to Wellbase for well number 2.3, now the deviation survey is a lot more detailed because the planner has gone in and made that survey for me. It's not just those 4 or 5 points that I digitized. It's a much more detailed plan. And if I were to refresh my wells again here in GeoPlus, because that server has been updated in WellBase, because everything is now kind of saved as part of the well, I can actually see what I did, and I did a pretty funky looking thing here for that one well, but that's how you'll go in, and then you can plan those individual wells per to make sure that you're getting the deviation service that you need. So that's a quick look at Field Planner and what we've all the new changes that we have done with it. It's a pretty exciting new tool. Again, I didn't have the time to get into too much detail for it because we've got a lot of other things to cover. We've got questions, feedback, things you'd like to see it do even better. Please let us know. Get in touch with us. Let us know, and we'd be very, very happy to take that feedback in and make this tool even better than what it is right now. Next, let's talk about some data management. And first up is an update on our growing partnership with TGS. We first introduced a connection to TGS well data in 2024.1. It allowed you to bring TGS well headers, deviation surveys, raster logs, and digital logs straight into your GeoGraphix project without needing separate workflows or manual imports. In 2024.2, we've expanded that capability even further. You can now bring in formation tops, production data, completions, perforations, and DST data all streamed directly from TGS servers straight into your GeoGraphix projects. And to make things even easier, we've added automation tools to manage your TGS imports. You can now schedule recurring downloads, automatically checking for new wells every week, every month, or even every day if you want. You can choose exactly what data you want to bring in and when you want to bring it in. We've also introduced recency filters, so you can download only wells that were added or updated in the last 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on whatever fits your needs. In addition to these enhancements to our TGS connection, we are also actively working with other data providers to find ways to get data into GeoGraphix more easily. 2024.2 introduces our partnership with MJLogs, who are a big provider of log data, especially raster logs here in North America. If you subscribe to get raster data from MJLogs, you can now access those logs directly on the GeoPlus map. The whole thing is very interactive. You select a group of wells on the map and we'll search the MJLogs database for you. You'll see what raster logs are available, and then you can download them straight into your project. Depth registered, ready to go. We have plans to extend this connection even further and integrate it into more GeoGraphix modules. And all of this lines up with our focus on trying to make it as easy as possible for you to bring your data into GeoGraphix, no matter where you're getting it from. All right, now we're going to move on to an area that hasn't gotten a lot of love for a while, and that's Query Builder. 2024.2 adds a lot of flexibility in how you can design your queries. So we've added some functionality that lets you make queries that you couldn't make before or weren't easy to make before. Let me show you what I mean. First of all, you are now able to add as many criteria rows as you need. You're not stuck with a fixed 5 rows that we've had in the past. If your query needs 10 conditions, 20 conditions, even more, no problem. Just keeping adding rows as you need. Secondly, you can now define AND rows, not just OR rows. So in the past, we've had those fixed 5 rows, all of them have been ORs. Now, not only can you add as many rows as you need, you can add AND rows. Like in this example that I have here on the screen, I'm finding wells that have picks both for the RDRV and the BKKN formations. In the past, to do something like this, you had to build 2 separate filters, and then you'd combine them using a set operation. Not only is that a lot of extra steps, but the biggest downside of doing it like that is that it gives you a static filter. If your database changes, you add more wells, you take wells out, all of the component filters of that set operation have to be updated separately, and then you have to rerun or recreate your set operation to get your results. So all of this is a lot of manual work, but with this small but powerful change, you can now build dynamic filters that automatically stay up to date as your database evolves, just like any other well-based filter. Additionally, we've added the ability to use the OR operator within the same row. Instead of combining all the columns with ANDs, you now have the option to mix in an OR. This also radically simplifies certain kinds of queries. For For example, here I'm looking at wells that have production data either in WellBase or in Zone Manager. I don't need to build complicated set operations. I don't need to build separate queries. Just a quick, easy setup right inside Query Builder. And lastly, you now have a new option to return only distinct well IDs. So instead of getting a big list with multiple records for each well, you can get a nice clean list of just the wells that match your query. It makes it a lot easier to export or copy the results straight into other workflows without having to clean anything up. That's just the start. We've had even more enhancements, not just in Query Builder, but across all the data management apps. There's a ton of other stuff that I just don't have the time to go over today. Just a few highlights. You can now import well lists from text files into WellBase. You can interpolate tops directly from ISOMAP, again, in WellBase. When you're importing data into Zone Manager, you can now apply a well filter, so you're not updating wells you don't want to update. We've got new timestamps for interval data, for log curve data, so any changes that you make, you will know when that was updated last time. And there's a lot of UI improvements to make things feel snappier, more intuitive, and just to get more information from what you're looking at on the interface. On the geophysics side, big news, our on-the-fly attribute and inversion tool that we introduced again in 24.1 with its multi-panel viewer. That's now also available in the 3D view. You can apply on-the-fly attributes, you can apply inversions right there in the 3D view. You can adjust your parameters, you can tweak your inversion filters, and immediately see the impact in 3D without waiting on volume generation. And to help with the QC, you can now overlay logs in the multi-view. So again, we introduced the multi-view last release in 24.1. You can add your horizon data, you can add your fault data, you can add wells, but you weren't able to display log curves on top of those wells. And that is one key QC tool that you need, especially when you're doing inversion, to understand what your wells, how your wells and your seismic relates. So now you can overlay logs in your multi-view. You can put it down as lines, filled panels, or full templates from GVERSE Petrophysics right on top of your inversion or your seismic or your attributes. Again, everything being computed on the fly, and it just makes it a lot easier to compare your log curves with real-time data and fine-tune your model. On the geology front, specifically in GeoPlus, we've focused a lot on the performance. That's pretty much what we worked on for this release. In 24.2, we wanted to make it snappier, faster, easier to load interpretations, load well data, load layers, turning the model on or off. We made that much faster, even rendering your cross-sections. So when you have a big cross-section with a heavy UDE on it, we've tried to make that process a lot faster, and just the general overall 3D view, map view, cross-section, just make it more responsive, and also better integration, faster integration with other modules like WellBase and Zone Manager. So reading data and writing data to the rest of GeoGraphix should be a little bit faster. And one last highlight, Petrophysics. You can now rename curves on import, resample curve sets, update headers, export wells in a single file, and more. We've also added new options for posting core data and customizing your templates. So that's a quick look at what's new in 24.2. We've got over 100 new features in total, but these are the ones that I think you'll use right away. If you want a deeper dive, we're happy to set up follow-up sessions for specific workflows. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. And I hope you give 24.2 a try soon. And I'm sure you'll find something that is useful specifically for you in there. As always, if you've got feedback, questions, do let us know. And with that, it's goodbye from me. Thank you.